Hi, I was just shooting the review of this new Siglent 5000X series scope. It's a 1 gig. It's their new entry into the 1 gigahertz scope market. And I was actually doing an Excel comparison table between these, between all the various 1 gig scopes on the market. As usual, I kind of got carried away in it and I spent more and more time on it. I thought, hey, this would probably be better, as rather than just putting it somewhere in that 1 hour long review video, I thought I'd do a separate video actually comparing and looking at the different 1 gigahertz bandwidth oscilloscopes on the market and see how they stack up. So let's take a look. I'll show you my spreadsheet. Please forgive me, I have weaponized man flu at the moment. I'm going to try to hold it together. That's why the window's tiny. Oh no, I'm gone. Alright, so we have the Siglent 5000X series, brand new. We have the Rigol DS7000, although it's not a 1 gig scope. I do actually have one here, and I know it's another sort of cost equivalent one for at least up to 500 megahertz bandwidth, so I thought I'd include it anyway. And Rigol do have a new an MSO 8000 series coming soon. There's a photo of it on the website, but I don't think there's any details about it yet, and it's going beyond 1 gig. So maybe, you know, might have to update the spreadsheet when that one comes out, but I've got absolutely no information on that. So at the moment, Rigol's not in the 1 gig scope market. Then we've got the Rohde and Schwarz RTM 3000 series, 3004, which is not to be confused with the RTB 2000, which is incredibly popular lower cost scope. This one is a model up from that, and you'll notice that it actually has the ×10 auto probe, like the active probe power interfaces on here. That's why I included it in this, as well as it goes to 1 gig, whereas the RTB 2000 series doesn't. So the RTM 3000 series, and we've got the Keysight 3000X series touch model, which I have here in the lab and you've seen countless times, and also the Keysight 4000 series as well. I thought I'd include them because this is like a bigger touch screen. It's you know, it's got a few extra bells and whistles, but it's quite similar to the 3000, as we'll see. And then Tektronix have, of course, just released, like yesterday, was it? I think it's yesterday or today, Yankee time, released the new 3 series mixed domain oscilloscope, and also the new 4 series as 2 extra models below the 5 and the 6 series they introduced. So they're going in this new series thing, which is great. Now, the 3 series is actually a mixed domain, or MDO oscilloscope. You can see it's got the RF spectrum analyzer input down here, and this scope has now replaced the MDO 3000, and I think they might have or will be discontinuing the MDO 4000 as well, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, yeah, so that's a 4-channel plus spectrum analyzer, and it looks to be based on essentially identical hardware because all the specs are pretty much the same as the MDO 3000. So I believe the front end and all the other acquisition and hardware stuff is exactly the same. So they've just repackaged it, put in a bigger screen. They've got the now touch user interface with the new series interface GUI thing that they started with the Series 5. So just to standardize across the range, I think that's a smart move. But anyway, it's a shame that they didn't redesign the hardware. So apart from the bigger screen, looks to be identical. And then we have the new 4 series mixed domain oscilloscope. It's got the what do they call them, flex channel or whatever, exactly the same as the 5 and the 6 series. It can accommodate either an analog channel or various active probes and current probes and voltage probes, and also a logic analyzer as well. So if you want the logic analyzer in this, you have to sacrifice one of the channels, and that's been one of my criticisms of the 5 series when it originally came out, and exactly the same thing here on the 4, except the 4 series a little bit physically smaller than the 5 series, which is good because the 5 series was absolutely enormous, and it's only got 6 channels instead of 8, which up to 8 that you can get on the 5 and the 6 series. And it's not a mixed domain, so it doesn't have the spectrum analyzer input, so it's just a regular MSO. And then the Wavesurfer 3000 from Lecroy, that was their lowest cost current 1 gig option, although, you know, you don't hear much about Lecroy scopes. They don't do marketing very well. All right, so let's go into this spreadsheet that I've compiled. You can see that the different scopes are across here: Siglent, Rigol, Rohde and Schwarz, Keysight 3000, 4000, the new 3 and 4 series techs, and the Lecroy in the same order that I just opened the data sheets there. I've got prices for various options starting from 200 meg, 350, 500, and up to 1 gig if those options are available in that scope range, and what the extras cost: the arbitrary waveform generator, logic analyzer options, the serial decoders. I've got sample rate, I've got max memory depth, I've got the type of display on it, I've got information about the lowest vertical range, I've got the ADCs, I've got the fast Fourier transform, I've got the gated FFT, I've got the update rate, maximum update rate, bode plot, whether it has bode plot functionality, spectrum analyzer, of course only the MDO is going to have that, zone triggering, segmented memory, mask testing, and some details on the ArbGen, whether it's got the power analysis function, which seems popular these days, the accuracy of the time base for those playing along at home, and whether or not it's got color intensity display if you are an aficionado of the color graded display, and peak detect, and also maybe some sample rates down here. So let's take a look at, let's go through each one of these options. This could take a while. Now let's cut right to the chase, because that's the title of the video, a 1 gig bandwidth scope. The new Siglent SDS5000 X series is the cheapest 1 gig bandwidth scope you can currently get, brand new, that you can currently get on the market, and we'll go into brand new versus used at the end of this video, so stick around. So this is a base model with no options. Now sometimes all these prices, they're all in US dollars, and they will vary drastically between regions, or could, depends on whether or not they've got bundles and specials. Some of them do, which we'll mention briefly, and yeah, like, and often you can deal with the salesperson. They might throw in some options just to get the sale on a big high ticket 1 gig scope. So I wouldn't be spending like 14 or 15 grand here on a scope and then not asking them to throw in a few options. I'm sure they would. So as you can see, the Siglent by far the cheapest at almost 7,300 Yankee bucks. Rigol don't have an option yet, the new MSO 8000. I expect it to be priced probably similarly because, well, Siglent and Rigol are battling out that sort of, entry-level market, even though 1 gig's not entry-level, but in terms of entry-level manufacturers, they're not the top 3 or 4. Now, I'll come back to the Rohde and Schwarz in a minute. The Keysight 3000T is $11,200 for just the base model. The Keysight 4000X is $14,000, so you're paying a lot more for that bigger screen. I don't think there's a huge amount difference otherwise, dual channel option or whatever, but there's not a huge amount difference between those. And there might be a critical difference depending on your application, and of course any recommendations I make in this video obviously are going to be contingent upon your particular requirements. Sometimes you may not go for the best value for money. Some particular scope in here, they may only be one option because it's got the particular feature or spec that you actually want, and none of the others do. So I can't possibly go, this spreadsheet would be, I don't know, more than 100 rows long if I went in there and like did absolutely every conceivable option inside the scope. It'd be horrific. So almost 15 grand for the 4000X series. That's pretty pricey, but hey, the new Tektronix 3 series, here's the thing. With the new Tektronix 3 and 4 series, they really don't want you to know what these scopes cost, and probably for a reason. I think they have published on their some of their pre-release teaser marketing material starts from and things like that, but really these prices, I could not find prices publicly anywhere. You go to the Tektronix website, you have to fill out this silly option quote form, and you send it away with all the different options you want, and we'll have a sales rep contact you. Bugger off. Like, seriously, like, come on. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so I could not get any prices on the new 4 series. Why have I got series? But somebody on the EEVblog forum actually pinched some prices from the Newark website before it went live, and I think these prices are confirmed here for the 3 series as a base model. I think their base model options are 5,000 and almost 10 grand, and then almost 13, and then 15 grand for the 1 gig one. So, pricier, or same price as the Keysight 4000, and that's not surprising because Tech and Keysight consider themselves main competitors, so they're obviously obviously going to be price matching in the various categories. That's just, they've been doing that for decades. But I, of course, expect the new 4 series, because it's a much higher spec scope, to be pricier than this. And by the way, the 3 series MDO, it's not an MDO when you buy it. It's just a DSO. It doesn't come with the logic analyzer, and it, most importantly, doesn't come with the spectrum analyzer option. You have to buy that separately. I don't have a price on the spectrum analyzer option. Probably similar to the old MDO 3000 pricing. And the Lecroy pricing here from 4,700 up to 10 grand. So I'll just let you have a look at those. Now, let's go back to the Rohde and Schwarz. They've actually got, these prices were, some of these were on special on various websites. So these were either trade prices where I could find them. But Rohde and Schwarz, I believe up until the end of this year, so pretty much, you know, from here on out, they are offering, but I believe it's only on the 1 gig model where you can get all the options fully loaded, included for one price. And this does vary to the by regions. The US, I think, is slightly different to the EU and other places around the world and stuff like that. It's all the weird geographical pricing crap. Anyway, obviously, if price is your only object and you want a brand new scope with 1 gig bandwidth as a bare minimum, obviously the Siglent is the clear winner here. There's just, you know, like it beats all the others by like 2,700 bucks. So yeah, but I'll go into that later when we look at used things and stuff like that. But I reckon out of all these, by the way, if I've highlighted something green on here, it means I think it's a standout. And if I've highlighted something red, I think it's particularly bad. Not necessarily a showstopper, but it's something you really want to think about before you have a look at the scope. I think that the RTM 3000 from Rohde and Schwarz at a width of a fag paper under 10 grand, that is probably the best value for money in terms of like extra stuff you get. Like we'll go down to the different things down here, but I think that is the value for money winner at the moment. Depends on your location, depends on your bundles you can get and deals you can do and stuff like that, because it's a 10-bit scope, and that's really, really nice. So that's worth paying the extra for. But hey, if you're strapped for cash on a new scope, the Siglent. After that, if you're really keen on the Keysight, and there's several reasons to be keen on it still, even though it's quite old in the tooth, there is a fairly significant difference between the 3000 and the 4000 series here. And as I said, unless it's got something very specific that you need, they're almost identical scopes, except the 4000 is physically bigger, has a bigger screen, but the resolution doesn't change. Look down here, 800 by 600 screen, 8.5 inch versus 12.1 inch. Great, it's bigger, but it doesn't gain you any extra real estate for viewing your waveforms. So, nah, you know, unless you needed the 4000, I'd be probably still looking at the 3000. And the new Tech 3 Series MDO at 15 grand base. Once again, traditional tech pricing, it's, you know, it's sky high. It's the most expensive of the group. And the 4 series is going to be above that again. So unless you really got moist at the thought of having a tech scope on your bench at a 1 gig one, then, well, they're very pricey options. They just don't seem to do pricing and value for money that well. But, you know, they're no doubt good scopes. But you know, well, as we'll see down here, there's a few red bits, so we'll go into that. And the Lecroy 3000 at 10 grand, I would much rather have the Rohde and Schwarz compared to the Lecroy at that. I don't think there's any contest there. So the Lecroy's, I think it's probably out of this, unless you're a Lecroy fanboy, in which case, that's fine. It's going to be a good scope, no doubt. But technically the most expensive on the list in terms of serial decode options is the Rohde and Schwarz. But as I said, they will now bundle it together all in one, and you get everything, including the power analysis options and flex and you know, CAN bus and all the serial options, every single option on the scope fully loaded. So yeah, that's real good marketing ploy. I like that. Speaking of marketing employees, Rohde and Schwarz, the reason why the RTB 2000 series is very popular at the moment is not because it's a great scope, but because when they initially released it, they did this awesome deal. I think it was like $2.5 grand, and then included full bandwidth, full options and everything, and they only released like 500 of them, and everyone on the EEVblog forum and everywhere else just snapped them up like that. It was like half price. It was crazy. And, you know, you don't see Tektronix just released their new scopes today. You don't see any, you know, launch day deals or anything like that to get people excited. People just go, oh, yeah, it's just like the 5 series, but it's a little bit cheaper and meh. But of course, the Siglent include the serial decodes as a standard, or the basic ones as a standard option, and the Rigols include them as well. The Rigols actually got a bundle special at the moment. They didn't normally include these, but yeah, they include them at the moment. So these are the special bundled prices, and they'll even throw in, I believe they throw in the ARB Gen, don't they? Yep, included. They throw in the ARB Gen as well. All the others are optional ARB Gen, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe the Rohde and Schwarz gives you all. Check it out. I do. Come on, I spend enough time on this as it is. So one of the reasons why the new Rigol 7000 didn't get people very excited, even though they've got their own new chipset, they're one of the big players, they've got their own ASIC, the front-end ASIC and the acquisition chip, their own custom ASIC, so they're one of the big players now in that respect, but they just didn't price it right. It was just too pricey, and really, like, meh, you know, are you going to pick the, you know, if you're after a 350 mega, you're going to pick the Rigol 7000 over the RTM 3000? And the most expensive ARB waveform gen option was the Keysight 4000 at just over $1,000, but it is dual as opposed to a single ARB wave gen, but it comes free with the chipset. They put like $5 worth of parts in it and they charge like $1,000 for it. That's the same with the Tektronix MDO, or the original series. To get the spectrum analyzer in that, I think I analyzed it once. It's probably estimated the price. It's probably less than $50 in parts. Because it's a very simplistic front-end design. But yeah, anyway, they want to charge a couple of grand for it or something. Meh. Now, in terms of sample rate, none of them really suck here. I did mark the Tektronix MDO3 series as a red, because even though it's 5 gig, if you're using the 1 gig bandwidth, then it's you only get 2.5 gig samples per second, so it's interleaved. So you have to halve that. So technically, that's the worst of the bunch. The other ones, of course, will halve when you put on another channel, but the MDO3 series, I believe, does it when you don't even enable the other channels. It's just at the sample rate. It's at the bandwidth that you require. So yeah, at the higher sample rate. So meh. And the Lecroy here is no standout at 4 gig samples per second, but it's more than enough for a 1 gig bandwidth. So, you know, no problems. The winner here was the Rigol with 10 gig samples per second. As I said, most of these will interleave with the second or subsequent channels turned on. Now, the maximum memory depth, the new players, the Siglent and the Rigols, they've really been pushing this area. They have for like, I don't know, a decade now or something. They're both 250 meg samples as standard, although the Rigol 7000 can go to 500 meg samples if you really need that. Anyway, the RTM 3000 is no slouch at 80, of course, and the Tektronix 3 series 10 meg, that's, you know, it's enough. But in the 4 series has got a lot of memory, as you'd expect, and the Lecroy's got 20. That's more than enough as well. Now, of course, the losers in this group, and one of the biggest obstacles for buying a Keysight now, is that they still use that same Mega Zoom 4 ASIC, which is what, 8 years old at least. So it's very old. They haven't updated. It's got the 4 meg samples maximum, and a lot of people don't worry about the sample rate. It's more than enough, and these are still great scopes. But if sample memory is your thing, yeah, you want to think twice about the Keysight. And as far as the display goes, the standouts are the new Tektronix 3 and 4 series scopes. They've got full HD 1920 by 1080 and screens. They're all the models in this Shootout are touchscreen, so no worries there. And most of them got like gestury type meh. So definitely the standouts there in terms of resolution. It's absolutely brilliant. And I believe none of these increase screen resolution when you hook on an external screen either, which is it's a real shame. You know, it'd be nice. Whack on an external screen, get full HD on your Rigol or your Siglent or whatever, or your Keysight, but nah, they don't do it. Anyway, the losers here are still the Keysight. Actually, I should actually mark those as red, because they're still only 800 by 600, although the Keysight 4000 series is the biggest screen, physically biggest, if you don't count the real super expensive Tech 4 series, which is might be priced out of this Shootout anyway. The others are 1024 by 600 is popular. across 3 of them, and the Rohde & Schwarz beats that by having 1280 by 800. So the Rohde & Schwarz is the next best display option after the Keysight jobbies. Now, vertical front end is a bit tricky, and you've really got to go into the data sheets on this and take a look at the fine print. Well, let's have a look at this Siglent data sheet, shall we? And see what this caveat is. Yeah, it's got 500 microvolts per division, and they'll plaster that over the banner specs. But what they don't tell you is you don't get your 1 gig bandwidth that you paid for. You only get 200 meg bandwidth. It's a little asterisk. You see this little asterisk? Double asterisk, double asterisk. Let's go down here. Below 1 millivolt per division, the bandwidth is limited to 200 megahertz. So that 500 microvolts per division doesn't work. But yeah, that's only for the 350 meg model. For the 500 meg and the 1 gig model, basically, they're all limited. Below 2.45 millivolts per division. I don't know why that exact number, that seems a bit weird. Anyway, the bandwidth is limited to 200 megahertz. So basically, you've got to go to the 4 or 5 millivolts per division, whichever it uses, before you'll get your full 500 meg or 1 gig bandwidth. Trap for young players. So the Rigol, I believe, has 1 millivolt over the full bandwidth. Please correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll update the spreadsheet. I might make it publicly available, maybe, and we can add to it. Anyway, the Rohde & Schwarz is the standout. It's the only one that gets green because it has a true 500 microvolt range over the full bandwidth. And it does it with a 10-bit converter. So if you want, you know, probably the best front-end bandwidth option, you probably can't beat the Rohde & Schwarz there. The new 3 Series MDO, that's 1 millivolt over the bandwidth, I believe. The 4 Series has a 500 microvolt range, but it's just software magnified 1 millivolts or 2 millivolts. I think, yeah, the data sheet seems unclear about that. Oh yes, they claim to have the industry's lead-in vertical resolution, but which is a 12-bit converter, by the way. As you saw there, if you want the highest resolution, the new Tech 4 Series is the best way to go. 12-bit converter, but you pay through the nose for it. But if you go into the data sheet, you got to read carefully. It's only 12 bits at the 3.1 gig sample per second. If you go to the full sample rate, you drop back to 8 bits. Thank you very much. And by the way, all the scopes, I believe, have the high-res boxcar average on here as a given, so I didn't really include that on the spreadsheet. And there you go. Note, 500 microvolts per division is a 2 times digital zoom of 1 millivolt per division, or a 4 times zoom of 2 millivolts division, depending upon instrument settings. That's a bit, it's a bit airy-fairy. What instrument settings? They don't tell you. Hence why I've put it in here, mag of 1 millivolt or 2 millivolts, so I don't know what's going on there. If you do, let us know, if you've actually played with one. And the Lecroy is 1 millivolt across the range, I believe. So, the ADC, as I said, the Rohde, 2 standouts are the Rohde & Schwarz and the Tech 4 Series. But Tech 4 Series is like double the price, I think, of the Rohde & Schwarz for the same bandwidth. So, if you're looking for a decent, better than 8-bit converter, the Rohde & Schwarz is probably your best option. It's probably the only option, really, unless you want to spring for the 4 Series. Now, FFT, the 2 standouts here are the Keysights. Once again, even though they're only 64K point FFTs, which is buried by the 2 meg and 1 meg of the Siglent and Rigol, respectively, they're hardware-based FFTs, so they're really quick, and I've done a video on this. But I guess if you want pure resolution, I think the standout is the Siglent. The Rigol's not far behind at 1 meg. The Rohde & Schwarz, it doesn't actually say. I couldn't find it in the data sheet. I think I knew at one stage. Maybe it's in that FFT video I did, but I'm not sure. But it's better, I believe it's better than the Keysight. The Tech 3 Series, I couldn't find it in the data sheet, but of course it has the separate spectrum analyzer option. But I couldn't find the FFT number of points. The 4 Series, oh, I left it out. No, there's actually nothing in there that tells you the number of points in the 4 Series 1 either. And the Lecroy has 1 meg, so yeah, but I still think if you want like probably the fastest updating FFT, it's almost certainly going to be I think it's going to be the Keysight series because it does hardware decoding. The Siglent claims to do hardware decoding as well, but I haven't compared raw speed on those, so I don't know. It could be really schmick. It could be the absolute standout there, the new Siglent. Don't know. And then gated FFT, the only one that has I think the Lecroy might have it, but I haven't got one to play with. I'm not sure whether or not it's available. Gated function is available on the FFT or not, on the math function. But anyway, the Keysight do deliberately have this, and they're the only ones who have it really. So if you need to gate, what that means is time gating. So on the screen, you can just choose a particular part of the waveform and just get the FFT on just those parts. And that can be handy for many circumstances. So I think the Keysight's really the only one that has that. Now, update rate. This one's really tricky. Now, I could have a whole table of update rates, and you really need to if you want to compare scopes like properly, because the banner spec is just the maximum update rate, and usually that'll be only achievable on one or a couple of the optimized time-based settings, depending on the sample rate and the memory depth and all that sort of stuff. But of course, even after 8 or 9 years, the Megazoom 4 ASIC in the Keysight 3000 and 4000 still does the business, still the winner at 1 meg update speed. The Rigol's the next best at 600k. The Siglent, the new Siglent at 110k, is actually worse. It's slower than the model down from that. So I don't know what the, why? Completely weird. So the Rohde Schwarz, I've put in red here, is 64k update. Technically, it's the smallest maximum, but it's a really fast and responsive scope. So I wouldn't, unless you're really desperate for that, I wouldn't rule out the Rohde Schwarz just based on that. So yeah, I put it in red because technically it's the smallest. But I think the trickiest in this are the Lecroy is 130k, so it's fine. And the Tektronix 3 and 4 series, these are the trickiest, because look at the 4 series. That's not a typo. That's not 100k to 500k. That's 100 waveform updates per second on their brand new architecture they've been working on for years. On normal mode, if you turn the scope on, you use it in normal mode, it's 100 waveform updates per second at best. It's as slow as a wet week. Unbelievable. Even the lower 3 series is better, with 50,000 waveform updates per second minimum. Now, it doesn't tell you that in the Tektronix 4 series manual here. It just says greater than 500,000 waveform updates per second, which sounds fantastic, but I have been informed that it's actually, but that is in its, what's that mode called? That the super acquisition mode, which you deliberately have to switch on, and then you get bugger all sample memory with it, and then you'll get your 500,000 waveform updates per second maximum. But I've been informed that it's only 100 in normal mode. Not 100k, 100. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, here it is. Fast ACK technology. High-speed way to debug a design problem. Your first digital phosphor technology with Fast ACK. They've had this for like, I don't know, 20 years, have they now? Provide you with fast insight in the real operation, instant waveform capture rate greater than 500,000 waveforms per second. So it effectively implies it there, but they hide it in the specifications because they're probably too embarrassed to admit how slow it is if you don't turn on the fast ACK mode. And of course, you drop the memory when you do that. And Tekscopes have done this for, I don't know, 20 years now or something. Long time. So that is terrible, Muriel, for their brand new architecture. That's absolutely shocking. Next is Bode plot, which seems to be all the rage. Keysight started it just, and then Siglent copied them, and everyone's got it. But you'll notice the new Siglent, it does not have it. Whereas the other lower model Siglents have the Bode plot function. Why? Why doesn't the new one have it? By the way, the new Siglent, the ARB generator is not built in. You have to buy the external box for it, and it plugs in via USB cable, which is really annoying. It's just another thing to get lost or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't have it. Why? Right, the Rigol apparently doesn't have it. The Rohde Schwarz does have it. And in fact, the Rohde Schwarz is probably one of the best specified scopes out of this whole lot. If you look at the specs, they go to town on everything, as we'll see a bit later. And they specifically say it does up to 500 points per decade in the Bode plot. So that's really fine plotting. That's fantastic. The Keysight has it. I don't know what they're... I think it's fairly coarse. It's nowhere near that. And the 3 and 4 series does not have it. Their brand new flagship scope, just released, does not have a Bode plot functionality when everyone else seems to be doing it. And Lecroy, no show. And spectrum analyzer, that goes without saying, the MDO is the only game in town, the Tech3 Series MDO. It's the only one who has a real spectrum analyzer. Segmented memory, and here's where often you have to read into the details. Now, I think, no, the new Tech Series, the brand new Tech Series 3 MDO, because it's based on the same hardware as the old MDO 3000, it does not have segmented memory. This is basic stuff. The 4 Series does, but anyway, doesn't have it. But you have to look at the dead time, and not all manufacturers specify the dead time. That's the gap between when it's busy processing all the data, it doesn't have time to capture anymore. It's got to store it, and if any of your glitch or anything happens during that time that you're trying to, that could potentially trigger on, you'll miss that trigger. So the standouts here is the Rohde Schwarz. It's got a 200 nanosecond dead time. The new Siglent has 2 microseconds. Rigol, they don't specify it. The Keysight's a bit better than the Siglent at 1 microsecond dead time. Tech3 doesn't have it. And 200 nanoseconds. Oh, actually, that should be green. Yes, the new Keysight 4 Series matches. It matches the Rohde Schwarz RTM 3000, and the Lecroy has it 1 microsecond. Same as the Keysight. Mask testing, which has been on the Keysight for like 8 or 9 years now. I think they were the first to do. Were they first? No, they weren't the first to do mask testing, but on a lowish end scope they were, and it's built into the hardware. But look, once again, the new Tech scopes. This is incredible. Neither of them have basic mask testing functionality. Oh, that's terrible, Muriel. The Lecroy has it, and the mask testing in the Siglent claims to be hardware based as well, but they don't give a figure for how fast it is, whereas Keysight really talk up their hardware based mask testing. 270,000 mask tests per second. Whew, it's blinding speed. If you need to do production mask testing, that's what mask testing is usually for. If you've got a particular waveform in a product that you're measuring on the production floor, for example, you'd usually automate this kind of stuff, or you could do it standalone. But yeah, so if you're loading a reference waveform from a good product, and then you'll put the mask, the errors around what the limits that are acceptable, and then the oscilloscope will simply go pass fail, and will even count the number of failures and stuff like that. Very handy, almost essential for any sort of production engineering test environment, stuff like that. And the UpGen, you really have to go into the individual spec. I got tired of looking at the individual specs here. I don't think there's a standout, and I haven't got a consistent format, sorry for my data. I think the winner in terms of highest frequency out is the new Tech Series 4, but man, anyway, the Tech Series, the 3 Series. Yes, the 3 Series has an UpGen. Of course it does. There we go. There's the specs. I forgot to include that. Sorry. I'll just put yes. There you go. Can update that later. Yeah, there's no clear standout. You wouldn't buy a scope based on, you might, if you had a requirement specific, as I said, like a production test environment, you didn't want a separate box, something like that. Then, you generate an arbitrary waveform or something like that, or just a basic sine square triangle under software control with only the one interface and the one instrument. Then, yeah, but I think they're all pretty much going to do the job. And that's why I didn't mark anyone as green, because there's no real standout or no loser there. Power analysis mode. The new Siglent is the only one out of the lot. It seems to be, the in thing. It's been around, I think Keysight might have started, I think. And everyone now has power analysis built in, where you can hook it up, multi-channels up to your power supplies, your current sensors, and it can measure the efficiency of your power supply and all sorts of whiz-bang stuff. It's usually a very expensive software option. But as I said, if you buy the Rohde Schwarz up here with all the options, you get the power analysis option, which is normally like $1,000 or $2,000. And of course, the manufacturers know that that is a specific function that a lot of people might need, and they milk that cash cow for that option on the power analysis. Time-based accuracy, I thought I'd throw that in there. The standouts are actually the lower cost ones, the Siglent and the Rigols down here. But the Rohde Schwarz is also right down there at 2.5 ppm. The worst, I didn't mark them red because it's not particularly bad. The Keysight's, the Tech3 Series MDO. I think the 4000 series has external clock input, doesn't it? So you can take it from your lab 10 megahertz reference. Anyway, the new 3 Series MDO hasn't got a great oscillator in it. 4 Series is pretty good, and the Lecroy's meh as well. But yeah, these three are the standouts. But you know, it's nice to have a low ppm oscillator. I think they should all spring for it. In this price category, talking about a 1 gig scope, come on, include a, you know, a 1 or 2 ppm oscillator in it. You know, temperature compensated oscillator, please. But of course, some manufacturers like Siglent, they actually specify 1 ppm for 12 months, but over 10 years it drifts to they only guarantee 3.5 ppm over the 10 years. A lot of the other manufacturers don't specify that. So yeah, so they might be very conservative. So the Keysights and the Lecroy's and the Techs may actually be much better than what they, or not the Tech, but the Lecroy's at 10 ppm might actually be much better than that, but they may actually be aging that over a long period of time and not telling you. Probably over the calibration cycle, which is often 2 or 3 years for these scopes. Some are only 1 year cal cycle though. And for you color intensity display fanboys, which ones don't have it? The RTM 3000 doesn't have it. I'm not a fan of the color intensity display. Some people are. The Keysights don't have it. The new Techs do. The Lecroy doesn't. So yeah, if that's important to you, knock yourself out. Now, peak detect, this is interesting because it's like one of the main modes of an oscilloscope. And like you go into the main acquisition mode and you'll have normal sample mode, you'll have average in sample mode, you'll have the high res, you know, increased number of bits ERES boxcar averaging mode, and you'll have peak detect. And there's one of them that doesn't have it, and that is the Lecroy. Although I think Lecroy might be a bit infamous for not having a peak detect mode, and I don't know why. Anyway, the standouts here are the Keysight at 250 picoseconds. Oh, no, sorry, and the 4 Series Tech at 200 picoseconds, but the others aren't far behind at 400, so it's meh. The Tech 3 Series MDO is not that great at 1.5 nano. And to round this off, as I said, the Rohde and Schwarz actually really specify things somewhat deeper than the other manufacturers do, and they actually specify the maximum bitrate for the serial decoders, 10 meg, 25, 6, and 2 respectively. I couldn't find anything similar for the other decoders. So if you know that information or you've tested it yourself, I can update the spreadsheet. But anyway, that's a meh thing. Unless you're dealing with specific high-speed bus interfaces. In that case, as I always recommend, especially when you're paying this sort of money, when you're paying multi-thousands of dollars, up to 5 digits for an oscilloscope, that's a lot of coin. And so you should be getting a demo model from them and try it out on your specific application, because you might find you'll come a gutser because you needed to measure 3 megabits per second can rate. Oh, and it didn't do it. It only, you know, or you might find, yeah, you buy the whiz-bang new marketed to the hilt 4 Series. It does everything, includes the kitchen sink, and you might find it doesn't do the sample rate decoding, or it doesn't have mask testing that you needed and you just didn't think of that, or it's got a slow waveform update in normal mode or whatever. So anyway, as you can see over this whole thing, there's no real clear standouts. You could count up the number of greens, but that's just my opinion. It might be a showstopper for you if it doesn't have something or things like that. So the Keysight has a lot of green there, but it's got some downside, which may be crippling with the memory. For example, your mask testing, you don't have that. Your segmented memory, if that's a thing for you, well, you can rule out the new 3 Series just released yesterday. No, thank you. And if you need power analysis, the new Siglent's not going to do it. And like stuff like that. So anyway, as I said, if I went through and every specification and drilled in and detailed, it'd be more than 100 items, 150 items long or something. It's crazy. So I can't possibly cover everything here, but if there's something you want specifically added, then I can take a look at it, or send me an email and tell me what the figures are, and I'll whack them in the spreadsheet. I might make this available as a public googly spreadsheet, perhaps. So you'll have to wait for my review of the new Siglent SDS5000. It's been slow progress. It's a very long, boring video. And there's I found a few bugs in it and things like that, which is common, but it's okay. But it is the cheapest brand new scope on the market. So if you really need that 1 gig bandwidth, it's the cheapest. Is it cheapest 500 meg? Yeah, it's the cheapest 500 meg. Oh, no, if you're after a 500 meg scope, there are other models on the market that will just go to 500, like the Rigol here. So I think GW Instec do a 500 meg model. And so, yeah, that's a different thing. I was focusing on 1 gig scopes here, even though I did include the Rigol. But yeah, have a look at the Rohde and Schwarz bundles if you're interested in the Rohde and Schwarz, because I think with all the options bundled together, they've done that for different scopes. They've also done that for the RTB 2000, but only certain bandwidth models or something like that. Anyway, it's kind of complicated. They've got these new bundle deals. Rigol are bundling because sales, I think, have been not great on the new Rigol 7000. They just didn't, it's not a bad scope, but they just didn't price it. You know, they really priced it at the high end, the equivalents. You know, would you rather have the Rigol MSO 7000, 11 grand, or the 10-bit Rohde and Schwarz with the bigger screen and everything and the better front end and stuff? It's probably a no-brainer there. So, you know, it all comes down to whether you want value for money, whether you want a specific specification for your particular requirements. And yeah, so I can't recommend everything. Even the old Keysight surprisingly actually holds up pretty well. It's not the cheapest thing on the market. I think they're probably going to have to start discounting fairly soon unless they've got a new scope on the way, which I have no idea about. But anyway, it's long overdue. The Megazoom 4 ASIC. There's got to be a Megazoom 5 ASIC out there. Come on. First person to get info on any new Keysight scope or the Megazoom 5 ASIC wins the internet. So although I haven't played with them, I have briefly played on my second channel. I played with a 5 series Tektronix scope at the trade show. Nothing really there stands out apart from the big screen and potentially the 12-bit converter on the 4 series, of course, but that's going to be a killer price. It's just not in the same ballpark as the other 1 gig bandwidths. And I think 1 or 2 of these go up to 1.5 gig. The new 4 series does. And I think one of the others goes up to 1.5 gig as, yeah, I think the 4000X might go up to 1.5 gig. So if you need the extra bandwidth, and all of them now, including the Siglent, they've got, I think, a $900 and something 1 gig active probe. I've also got that here. I might do like a little active probe shootout because I think I've got 3 active 1 gig or 1.5 gig active probes here. So I might do a separate video on that. If you want me to, give a video a thumbs up or comment down below. Do both, because engagement, you know, YouTube. But let's say that you wanted a 1 gig scope, and that was the thing that you wanted. You wanted a 1 gig bandwidth, reasonably modern digital scope. None of that analog rubbish. You wanted a digital one. Well, you know, yeah, you could spend your $7,300 on the Siglent, but if you just need that requirement and you don't mind buying second-hand or refurbished, then there's better value to be had in second-hand or refurbished for these high bandwidth scopes, I think. Let's have a look. Right, so let's open a new browser. Let's go to eBay, the US eBay. I've not logged in, although it seems to know who I am. Maybe I should have cleared my cookies. There's the 121 GW and some thermal labels. Anyway, let's just go. Like, there's many. I've done videos on how to search for oscilloscopes on eBay. But yeah, let's just go 1 gigahertz oscilloscope like this and see what we can pick up. Here we go. $800. 1 gig. 4 gig samples per second. Good. Tektronix. There you go. Right? Pre-owned or best offer. Buy it now. So if you just want 1 gig bandwidth in used, good condition, pulled from a working environment. Seller is resellery, so it's a reseller. I don't know if it's a test equipment reseller. You'd have to look at their, what you do is you go into their store and then you have a look at their categories, visit store. You don't just look at their feedback. You have a look at, yeah, look, their categories. Ashley, Kevin, George. What? What? Drew, Matt. Oh, they must be their agents. They must be names. I assume they're names of their agents who get secondhand stuff. So this is probably one of those professional eBay merchants. They've got a big staff if that's the case. Let's go into David. Let's see what Dave's got. Dave's obviously getting what a friend tip. What's a Centaur mail system? Oh, is that one of those mail envelope printers? I think that's one of those envelope franking, postal franking machines or whatever. Anyway, there you go. So $800, buy it now. It's probably, you know, it's likely to work. Shows the waveforms. You have a look at the waveforms and see if they got it hooked up to a sample waveform. No, you might have to take their word for it. But anyway, it's worth a shot for $800 compared to $8 grand. Right? If you just need the 1 gig bandwidth, winner, winner, chicken dinner. And should we even go further? There you go, under $1 grand. Buy it now. Like, and we could actually go down here And we could search by, I wouldn't recommend searching by sample rate because a lot of people don't fill in those forms and you can miss bargains. Oh God, I'm getting into an eBay tutorial now. Anyway, let's have a look at sold and completed items. Look at that. 1 gig, 400 bucks, parts only, pre-owned. But yeah, look, you can get them for, is that pre-owned? Is that working? But anyway, you can get these puppies for under $1,000, under for 800 bucks or best offer. Working, even that's reasonable. Oh, that's shipping to the, yeah, I don't think it knows I'm in Australia. That's probably US shipping, but that's like, if you just need the 1 gig bandwidth, what's the hand tech? 1 gigahertz, 1 gig sample per second, labeled wrong. Sponsored post from Hong Kong. Give me a break. And there's another Tech TDS. I know, you know, these are these are like 20, 25-year-old scopes or whatever, but still, they're, you know, if they're working for under $1,000, they're gonna get you your 1 gig bandwidth. You spend more on the probes than you will. You'll have to sort for secondhand probes. And also Keysight. Keysight's got their own refurbished store, so oscilloscopes and vectorscopes, and these are guaranteed by Keysight. They actually sell a lot of refurbished gear on here, and maximum bandwidth, one gig. Let's take a look. Lecroy. Oh no, I hit the wrong category. Don't. Shop Keysight on eBay. There we go. I hit the category. Anyway, they've got, I'm not sure if the manufacturers have their own store on here, but Keysight have been going for a long time, and if you ask them, they will discount. You don't necessarily have to pay the price on, even though it's already discounted from there. It is from 16 grand to 8,200. They'll possibly, you know, make it. They're all best offers. Make an offer and ask them if they can throw in some options. And I've heard on the EEVblog forum that they do throw in options. So there you go. So we can search 1 gigahertz oscilloscope. Just a broad search. If you were serious, you'd go in there. 7 grand. There's the MSOX 3000 with the mixed signal, so you get all the stuff. It's regularly 16 grand. There you go. 7.3. Why would you buy a new one? There's like, it's guaranteed by Keysight. I think it might even have like a 12-month warranty with it or something. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. Upgradable. Or the new 6. Look at this series for 11 grand. Wow. If you're going to buy, say, the new Tektronix 3 series, or this at 20, upgradable to 6 gig, 20 gig samples per second, 4 channels, the InfiniVision 6000X, it's much higher sample rate and everything. So that's a really specky high-end scope there, and it's just, yeah, wow. And see, it's got even the options. It's got segmented memory, it's got the memory upgrade, it's got the MSO, it's got the advanced math, DMM, whoop-de-doo, and remote. RML is remote, I think. So it's got these options, and ask them if you need another specific option. Just ask them. Oh, 30 days warranty. There you go. Tested and calibrated. Tested or calibrated. Whichever one, I guess. Yeah, anyway, factory guaranteed from Keysight. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic. And that's, you could probably get that for 10 grand or under if you asked them. I think if you put in a bid, you'd probably get that. So why would you get the new, you know, like, seriously, why would you get one of these new ones unless you really want a new scope? Why would you get one of these new techs or even one of the new Keysights here when you can buy a refurbished one? But they've only got one. So if you're a lucky person out there who'll nab that, then good on ya. So anyway, that was a hugely long video. Thanks for staying with me if you got right to the end. You can see why I wanted to pull this out, because I knew this would be long. So I pulled it out from the Rigol video, which is already probably going to be close to an hour long or something. So anyway, that'll come soon, but I'm slow at the moment. I got just not motivated with the flu. Anyway, yeah. Hope you liked the video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. As always, discuss down below and let me know if I've almost certainly guaranteed it, I've got something wrong on here or I haven't got the best options. Let us know in the comments. Catch you next time.